In the heart of
I
Nigeria,
will forever
between the
love
rolling
you,
hills of Umudai Kingdom,
and I
a
don't
love
care about
story
your
was born,
class or your
one that
wealth.
defied crowns, councils, and centuries of royal pride. It was the story of Crown Prince Obinna, the heir to a throne, and Amaka, an orphan girl whose heart was richer than gold. The sun hung low over Umudai Kingdom, bathing the ancient land in a golden glow. Palm trees swayed gently along the long road that led to the royal palace, where the grand festival of New Yams was in full swing. The air was filled with the rhythm of talking drums, ululations from women in vibrant wrappers, and the scent of roasted yam and palm oil stew wafting from the palace square. Inside the marble courtyard, Prince Obinna Ezebube, the first son of King Ezebube, walked among his people. He was tall, broad-shouldered, and strikingly handsome. His dark skin glistened in the sun, and his eyes carried a calm that made him seem both noble and approachable. He smiled as elders greeted him, bowing respectfully, calling him the pride of Umudike. But beneath the fine beads around his neck and the golden embroidery of his agbada, Obinna felt empty. The laughter around him echoed faintly in his heart, reminding him of something missing, something real. He had spent years surrounded by luxury, servants attending to his needs, scholars teaching him diplomacy, guards following him everywhere. Yet, for all the grandeur of the palace, there was no warmth. His mother, Queen Nena, was kind but distant. His father, King Ezebube, was strong but rigid, a man who ruled his household the way he ruled the kingdom, with unbending authority. Obinna longed for something simpler. That was why, that evening after the festivities ended, he slipped out through the back gates of the palace, dressed not as a prince, but as a common man. He rode his horse down the dusty road that led to a Maudo village, where laughter sounded freer and the stars seemed closer. He stopped at the orphanage, a humble compound surrounded by blooming hibiscus flowers. He had been donating quietly to the place for years, moved by how it cared for abandoned children. But that wasn't why he came tonight. He came to see her, Maka. She was sitting on the low wooden bench outside, surrounded by children. A lantern glowed beside her as she read a story from an old, torn book. Her voice was soft, melodic, carrying hope with every word. That and though the bird's wings were broken, she said, smiling at a little boy who leaned on her shoulder, it still learned to fly again, because the sky was waiting for it. The children clapped. Amaka laughed, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. It was then she noticed Obinna standing by the gate. "Your Highness," she said, rising quickly and bowing. He smiled faintly. "Amaka, how many times have I asked you not to call me that when we're here?" She smiled too, her eyes meeting his. "I can't help it, my prince. You were born of royalty. It shows in everything you do." Obinna chuckled softly and walked closer. "And yet, when I'm with you, I feel like I was born for something else, something beyond thrones and crowns." Her cheeks warmed. "Don't say that, my prince. Your father wouldn't like it." "I know," he said, lowering his voice. "But tell me, Amak, what do you see when you look at me? A prince or a man?" She hesitated. "I see a man who cares. A man who listens. A man who brings fruits for hungry children and never wants to be thanked." Obinna smiled, a deep, genuine smile. "Then that is who I truly am." They sat together on the bench. The night was quiet, save for the chirping of crickets and the distant call of a talking drum from the palace. He told her about his dreams of building schools for the poor, of creating a kingdom where kindness mattered more than title. She told him about her life, how she had lost her parents to a fire when she was 8, how she grew up in the orphanage, and how she promised herself she would never let another child feel abandoned. "I envy your courage," he said softly. "And I envy your freedom," she replied. "You have a world at your feet." He turned to her. "Yet I'd trade that world to walk barefoot beside you." Amaka froze, her heart racing. "Don't say that, my prince." But he took her hand gently. "Obinna," he corrected her. "When it's just us, call me Obinna." She hesitated, then whispered, "Obinna." It sounded like music to him. That night, as the moon rose over Umudike, the prince and the orphan sat side by side under the mango tree, sharing roasted corn and laughter. It was simple, pure, and real, something the palace could never give him. And though neither of them said it aloud, they both knew that love had quietly bloomed between them, a love that would soon challenge the weight of a kingdom. The palace of Umudike was a masterpiece of ancient royalty, red brick walls crowned with gold trimmings, wide courtyards filled with sculptures of past kings, and corridors lined with oil lamps that flickered softly through the night. But on this day, the palace was not peaceful. It vibrated with tension, whispers, and the sound of angry footsteps echoing through the halls. At the center of it all stood King Ezebub, his white beard glowing against his dark skin, his eyes blazing with fury. His royal staff struck the marble floor as he paced before the council of elders. "Is this what my lineage has become?" he thundered. "That the heir to the throne of Umudike, my own son, would soil royal blood by mingling with a commoner? An orphan of unknown roots?" The elders exchanged nervous glances. None dared to interrupt the king. At last, Chief Okari, the oldest among them, cleared his throat. "My king, it is true that love can blind even the wisest. But the boy must remember, a kingdom is not governed by emotions, but by alliances." The king's voice deepened. "He forgets who he is. He forgets what we built. I have already arranged his betrothal to Princess Adiku of Eek Kingdom, a union that would strengthen our borders and secure our legacy. Yet he disobeys." The queen, Nena, sat quietly beside her husband, her heart torn. "My husband," she began softly, "Obinna has always been kind-hearted. Perhaps this girl—" "Do not defend him," the king snapped. "He is a prince, not a lovesick boy chasing fantasies." Just then, the guards announced, "Your Majesty, Prince Obinna approaches." The room fell silent. Prince Obinna entered the royal hall with calm dignity. He wore a simple white kaftan, his head held high. Though he bowed before his father, the fire in his eyes betrayed his resolve. "My king," he said respectfully, "I have come because I heard you summoned me." King Ezebub's voice echoed like thunder. "You heard right, my son. Sit." Obinna remained standing. "Forgive me, father, but I will stand." The king slammed his staff against the floor. "Then stand and answer. What nonsense have I been hearing? That you, a crown prince, are spending nights outside the palace, with an orphan girl?" The court gasped. Obinna's jaw tightened. "It is no nonsense, father," he said steadily. "Her name is Amaka. She is kind, wise, and good. She teaches children to read and cares for the poor. Love her." The queen covered her mouth in shock. The elders murmured in disbelief. King Ezebub rose to his feet, towering above him. "You love her? You bring shame upon this throne. Love does not rule kingdoms. Power does. Tradition does. Bloodline does." Obinna took a deep breath. "And yet, what good is a kingdom without love, father? What good is tradition if it crushes the heart?" The king's voice broke with rage. "You will end this foolishness at once. You will marry Princess Adiku. The wedding preparations are already underway." Obinna shook his head. "No, father. I will not." "You will." "I cannot." Obinna's voice rose, his emotion finally breaking through his restraint. "I cannot marry a woman I do not love. Amaka may not have royal blood, but she has a royal heart, something even crowns cannot buy." The hall fell silent again, heavy with the echo of his words. The king's face turned red with anger. "If you leave this palace to follow her, do not return. You will no longer be heir to the throne of Umudike." Obinna looked at his mother. Her eyes glistened with tears, silently pleading with him. But the prince knew his heart had made its choice long ago. He bowed deeply before his father. "Then so be it, my king. I will not deny my heart for the sake of power. I choose her, not because she is perfect, but because she is my peace." He turned and began walking toward the door. "Obinna," the king roared. "If you walk out of that gate, you walk out of this kingdom forever." Obinna paused at the doorway. He turned slightly, his face calm but resolute. "Then may this kingdom remember me, not as a prince who bowed to pride, but as a man who followed love." He stepped out. The great doors closed behind him with a sound that echoed through every corridor of the palace, a sound that marked the end of obedience and the beginning of destiny. That night, rain poured heavily over Umudike as if the heavens mourned. Queen Nena wept silently in her chambers, praying for her son's safety. Meanwhile, far from the palace, Obina stood by Amaka's side, his cloak soaked through. "I have left everything behind," he said softly. Amaka's eyes widened in disbelief. "You left the palace? For me?" He nodded, cupping her face gently. "A crown means nothing if it costs me you." And in that moment, under the rain and thunder, the prince and the orphan embraced, two hearts choosing love over lineage, unaware that their choice would soon echo across kingdoms. The morning sun broke through the cloudy Lagos sky, its rays glinting off the rusted roofs of Suralire. Car horns blared, hawkers called out their goods, and the smell of freshly baked ajij bread drifted through the air. It was a far cry from the peaceful courtyards of Umudike Palace, but for Prince Obina, this noisy city had become home. He was no longer addressed as Your Highness. Here, he was simply Mr. Obi Amadi, a man learning to live like everyone else. Gone were the servants, the escorts, and the flowing robes. In their place came early mornings, crowded bus stops, and the constant hum of Lagos life. But beside him, always, was Amaka, his anchor. Their first few months were difficult. They rented a small one-room apartment in a compound where the water pump worked only on good days, and mosquitoes ruled at night. Yet, even in those humble walls, their laughter echoed. Each morning, Obina would rise early, help Amaka fetch water, and join her in their tiny corner shop. They had started with only a few rolls of African fabric, ankara, and a dyer, which Amaka handpicked from Balagan Market. She had an eye for colors, blending patterns so well that even passers-by stopped to admire them. One day, as they arranged new fabrics on the wooden shelves, Amaka sighed. "My prince, sorry Obina," she corrected quickly, smiling shyly, "sometimes I wonder if you miss home. The palace. The life you left behind." Obina turned, his hands dusty with chalk from marking prices on the wall. "I don't," he said softly, "because home isn't marble walls or gold thrones. It's wherever you are." She laughed lightly, blushing. "You talk as if love can fill stomachs." He grinned. "Maybe not stomachs, but it fills hearts, and that's enough for now." By the end of their first year, their shop had grown. Word spread about the couple who sold quality fabrics at fair prices. Amaka's warm smile and honesty drew loyal customers. Bankers, fashion designers, and brides-to-be came from far and near. They named their business Royal Touch Designs, partly as a private joke and partly as a silent reminder of where Obina came from. Soon, their little shop expanded into a small store with a bright blue signboard. They hired 2 assistants and bought a used car for deliveries. One afternoon, after delivering fabrics to a boutique in Lekki, Obina sat in traffic and looked at the bustling city around him, the tall buildings, the street hawkers, the hopeful energy of people chasing dreams. He realized that, for the first time in his life, he felt useful. Not as a prince born to rule, but as a man building something with his hands. That evening, Amaka was waiting at home, her hair tied in a scarf, the smell of jollof rice filling the room. She had something to tell him. "Obina," she began softly as they ate, "I went to the clinic today." He looked up immediately, worried. "Are you okay?" She smiled, her eyes glowing with excitement. "More than okay. We're going to have a baby." The spoon fell from his hand. "A baby?" She nodded, tears forming. "Yes, Obina. You're going to be a father." For a long moment he said nothing. Then he stood, pulled her up from her chair, and hugged her tightly, spinning her around the room. "A baby? Oh, Amaka, you've given me the greatest gift I could ever ask for." They laughed, they cried, and that night he knelt beside her belly, whispering softly to the life growing within. "My child," he said, his voice trembling with love, "you may never see the palace where I was born, but you will know what love feels like. You will grow where laughter is your crown and peace your inheritance." Months passed. Amaka's belly grew round, and Obina worked even harder. He made new business connections, partnered with Lagos fashion houses, and began exporting their fabrics abroad. Soon, Royal Touch Designs became one of the most talked-about African fashion brands in the city. When their son was born, Obina held him for the first time, tears streaming down his face. "He will be called Chidi," Amaka said, smiling weakly from the bed. "It means God exists. Because truly he does." Obinna nodded, looking down at his son, tiny fingers, soft cries, and eyes that mirrored his own. And he will know love, not titles. Years passed quickly. Their apartment gave way to a spacious home in Ikoyi, with glass windows overlooking the lagoon. Amaka's designs graced the pages of fashion magazines, and Obinna became a respected entrepreneur. They lived simply, even in abundance, cooking together, laughing often, and raising Chidi with kindness. Sometimes, in quiet moments, Obinna would stand by the balcony at night, staring at the stars. Somewhere beyond them lay Umudike, the kingdom he left behind. He often wondered if his father still thought of him, if the old man still burned with anger or had finally understood. Amaka would find him lost in thought and place her hand on his shoulder. "Do you miss home?" she would ask. He would smile faintly. "No. I found it long ago, the day I met you." But destiny never forgets its own. Far away, in the fading light of Umudike Palace, an aging king sat by his window, staring at a portrait of his lost son. His heart, once hard as stone, had begun to soften. "Find him," King Ezebub said to his guards one morning. "Find my son. I have a debt only a father's tears can pay." And so began a journey that would lead him to Lagos, and to forgiveness. The morning sun rose slowly over Umudike Kingdom, spreading its light over the red earth and palm trees that had watched generations of kings come and go. But that morning, the palace felt different, quiet, heavy, and filled with memories. King Ezebub sat alone in his royal chamber, wrapped in a thick, woven wrapper. His once broad shoulders had stooped with age, and the proud fire in his eyes had dimmed into something softer, sorrow. He stared at the painting on the wall, a young Obinna, smiling in royal regalia, taken on the day he was named Crown Prince. It had been years since he last saw that smile in person. A deep sigh escaped his chest. "I was a king," he murmured, "but I failed to be a father." Queen Nena, now with streaks of gray in her braids, entered quietly. She placed a tray of pepper soup beside him. "My husband," she said softly, "you have not eaten since dawn." He waved his hand. "What use is food when my spirit hungers for peace?" She sat beside him and took his hand. "Then make peace," she said. "Obinna is still your son. You can still find him." The king turned to her, his eyes wet. "After all these years? After all the words I spoke in anger? Even a father's anger cannot erase a father's blood," she replied. Her words struck deep. For days after, the king barely slept. He walked the palace grounds alone, remembering Obinna's laughter as a child, how he would chase fireflies, how he would sit by the throne asking endless questions about justice, kindness, and love. Now, the throne room felt empty without him. Finally, one morning he rose before sunrise, dressed in a simple white attire, no crown, no ornaments. "Prepare my horsemen," he told his guards. "I will go to Lagos." The guards gasped. "Your Majesty, the journey is long." "I will go," the king repeated firmly. "If my son could leave his father's palace for love, then I can leave my throne for forgiveness." Cityscape at dusk, Lagos, years later. The king's convoy arrived quietly in Lagos 3 days later. It was a rare sight, royal guards in traditional red uniforms and a black SUV carrying the once feared king of Umudike. The city overwhelmed him. Skyscrapers replaced palm trees, and the roads buzzed with endless traffic. The air was thick with life, traders shouting, okadas weaving through cars, and the sound of music spilling from every corner. He looked out of the car window, amazed. "So this is where my son built his world." With the help of his chief aide and a few contacts, the king traced Royal Touch Designs, now one of the leading African fashion houses in Lagos. The glass building stood tall in Lekki, its front doors gleaming under the sun. As he stepped out, people turned, whispering. His presence carried a quiet majesty even without his crown. Inside, mannequins dressed in rich fabrics lined the showroom. A young woman recognized him instantly. "Are you King Ezebub of Umudike?" He nodded gently. "Yes, my daughter. I came to find my son, Obinna Ezebub." The woman smiled warmly. "Oh, you mean Mr. Obi Amadi? He's inside his office, sir." The king's breath caught. "Obi Amadi. Even the name sounded humble, a man reborn. He was led to the top floor. Through the glass walls, he could see Obinna, taller now, more mature, his once boyish face lined with the wisdom of responsibility. He was seated beside Amaka, reviewing design sketches while their son, Chidi, played on the carpet with toy cars. For a moment, the king couldn't move. His eyes filled with tears as he took in the scene. His son laughing freely, his daughter-in-law smiling softly, and his grandson's innocent joy filling the room. It was everything he had once tried to destroy. And now, it was everything he longed for. He stepped inside quietly. "Obinna," he said. The room froze. Obinna looked up sharply, his eyes wide. The air seemed to leave the space between them. "Father?" he whispered. Amaka stood quickly, bowing respectfully. "Your Majesty." But the king shook his head. "Please do not bow. I am not here as a king. I am here as a father, a broken one." Obinna rose slowly. His heart raced with mixed emotions: love, anger, disbelief, and longing. "After all these years, you finally came?" The old man's voice trembled. "Yes, my son. I came because I can no longer live with the silence between us. I came to say, forgive me." Tears filled Obinna's eyes. "You cast me out, father. You chose pride over me." "I know," the king said, stepping closer. "And every day since, I have paid for it. My palace was full, but my heart was empty. You were right. A kingdom without love is nothing but stone." Amaka placed her hand on Obinna's arm gently. "Obi." He came with humility. "Let peace have a place too." Obinna looked at her, then at his father, older, frilier, and sincerely repentant. Slowly he stepped forward and knelt. "No, my son." The king cried, trying to stop him. But Obinna held his hand. "Father, it was never about the throne. I just wanted you to see me for who I was, not the prince, but your son." The old man's tears fell freely now. "And I see you, my son. Not as the prince I raised, but the man you've become. You built what I could not, a kingdom of love." They embraced, father and son, after years of silence and separation. The moment felt sacred, like a long-awaited rain after drought. Chidi toddled forward curiously. "Mama, who is that old man?" Amaka smiled through her tears. "That, my dear, is your grandfather, the king of Umyadike." The old man knelt, lowering himself to the boy's level. "My grandson," he said, voice shaking with emotion. "May your heart be as brave as your father's and as kind as your mother's." That night, they all shared dinner together. Jollof rice, grilled fish, laughter, and forgiveness. The king watched as Amaka served him food, her movements graceful and respectful. "My daughter," he said softly, "forgive an old man's pride. You gave my son the happiness I could not. You are the true queen of his heart." Amaka smiled humbly. "Thank you, your Majesty. Love does not hold grudges." The king nodded, eyes glistening. "Then, when you are ready, come home. Umyadike awaits its prince and its queen." Obinna and Amaka exchanged a long, emotional glance. For years they had built their world away from the palace. But now home was calling, not with pride, but with peace. The golden sun of Umyadike rose like a crown over the horizon, bathing the kingdom in soft morning light. Birds sang from the palace gardens as drums rolled in the distance, announcing the return of the long-lost prince. The people had gathered in thousands, men, women, and children dressed in vibrant iziagu and lace attires, their excitement filling the air with the scent of palm wine, roasted yam, and joy. For years, the people of Umyadike had mourned the silence of their prince. Rumors had spread. Some said he had renounced royalty, others whispered that the gods had punished the royal bloodline. But today, those rumors would die. Today, Prince Obinna was coming home, not just as a son, but as a man who had carved his destiny against tradition and found love that defied the throne. The royal convoy entered through the great gate of Umyadike, escorted by dancers and drummers beating the royal rhythm of welcome. Obinna stepped out of the car dressed in a white agbada embroidered with gold thread, his wrist adorned with coral beads that gleamed under the sun. Beside him was Amaka, radiant in a crimson George wrapper, her head tied in a regal geli that shimmered like sunset silk. In her arms, she carried their son, little Kizoba, who wore a tiny Iziagu top and beamed with the innocence of royalty born in love. The crowd erupted in cheers. Igwe! They chanted, clapping and dancing as the royal guards cleared a path toward the palace. At the palace gate, King Obis, now older and walking with a staff carved from ancient oak, stood waiting. The moment Obinna saw his father, he slowed his steps. The memory of rejection still lingered, but the warmth in his father's eyes dissolved every remnant of pain. "Father," Obinna greeted, kneeling respectfully with his head bowed. The old king's voice trembled as he spoke. "Rise, my son. My crown." He reached forward and lifted Obinna to his feet, then turned to Amaka, who bowed humbly. "Daughter," he said softly, "I once judged you unworthy of my son. But today, I see that you were heaven's choice all along. You gave him peace, and gave me a grandson." Tears glimmered in Amaka's eyes. "Thank you, Your Majesty." King Obis smiled and looked at the crowd. "People of Umyadike," he declared, his voice carrying across the palace courtyard. "Today, I hand the kingdom to a new dawn, to my son and his queen, who have proven that love can heal the pride of kings." The coronation began. The palace dancers moved gracefully as flutes and drums sang of royal destiny. The chief priest, adorned in white cowrie beads, stepped forward with the royal crown, resting it gently upon Obinna's head. With the blessing of the ancestors, the priest chanted, "Obinna, son of Obis, is now the Igwe of Umyadike. And Amaka, daughter of none but favored by the gods, is our new Lolo." The crowd roared in joy. Cannons fired. The air filled with ululations from women and chants of warriors. Obinna turned to Amaka, taking her hand before the entire kingdom. "You were once the orphan no one wanted," he whispered. "Now you are the queen who brought peace to a nation." She smiled, tears glistening. "And you, my prince, chose love over a throne, and still found both." Their son clapped his little hands as the drums thundered. From the palace balcony, the new king and queen waved at their people, the city lights of Lagos behind them now a distant memory, replaced by the ancestral soil of home. That night, the palace glowed with festivities. Laughter echoed through the royal courtyard as the people danced long into the night. The kingdom of Umyadike had not only regained its prince, it had found hope, born from the courage of love that refused to bow to tradition. And as the stars shimmered above the thatched roofs, the king who once rejected love smiled contentedly from his throne, knowing that his legacy was safe, not in gold or power, but in the hearts of a new generation led by love and humility. The drums beat louder. The people sang, "Obinna, the chosen one. Amaka, the heart of Umyadike. May love reign forever."